Let's talk right now about, well, whether or not you're aware of trans people this week, because we apparently should be aware of trans people because it is Trans Awareness Week, Transgender Awareness Week. Were you aware of this, Matthew Larson?
I wasn't aware that it was Trans Awareness Week, no.
I mean, do you feel shame? I think you should.
Are we not
always aware?
I thought we'd had it.
Oh, it's difficult to keep up. That might have been Black History Month. I believe it might have been. Pride. Pride is every month now.
Well,
it's always Pride Month.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I think that Pride Month is one thing, but it should encompass everybody. And then you don't need to unpick the L, the G, the B, the T, the I, the A, the Q, or the plus.
Wait a minute. When you say everybody, but you mean
everybody within
the alphabet people, as Dave Chappelle.
Absolutely, yes. So I think that one can overdo these things, isn't it? It's like National Pizza Day.
Okay, yes. I largely don't do the days, but there's the only reason I'm talking about this Transgender Awareness Week is because Hastings Borough Council feel very strongly about it, so strongly about it, in fact, that they have decided that in their bid to increase the visibility of transgender people and address issues members of the community face, they've decided to honour the memory of those who have lost their lives in acts of anti-transgender violence this year. That's Transgender Day of Remembrance on the 20th of November, which comes after Transgender Awareness Week. I kid you not. They have decided to raise the Trans Pride flag, which is where they would normally have, the union flag, the unifying flag of our country. Let's talk about this with James Esses. He's co-founder of Thoughtful Therapist and also author of the Declaration for Biological Reality. Good afternoon to you, James.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. You highlighted this on social media. The Guardian won't have seen it, or neither will the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol, because they've all decided to boycott X, and I know we're all very upset about that. But Hastings Borough Council, they're not the first council, they're not the last council. They have raised this flag before, but why does this bother you?
Well, harking back to what you and your panellists were just talking about, I mean, there was a time in which all of this nonsense was thankfully confined to 1 month of the year, but now it's 365 days a year of misery, as far as I'm concerned. And it really is shoving this stuff down people's throats. I mean, Bracknell, Hastings, various councils that have done this, they would say they're being inclusive. What they're actually doing is sending a message to residents in the local area that if they believe in biological reality, if they have concerns about what that flag is associated with, which is, erasing women's spaces and child safeguarding nightmares, that they essentially aren't welcome. It's a very, very bizarre, decision to see. And as you just alluded to, the only flag that should ever be flying outside of our public institutions is our national flag.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It is extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people say, oh, well, you're being very transphobic having this conversation, Julia and James. But the reality is, again, it's not inclusive. It is a flag and it's a flag that doesn't represent all people who identify as trans. A lot of those people are horrified by a lot of the activism. It's a flag that pushes a particular ideology that insists trans women are women, trans men are men, and has been pushing an idea, and it's pushed by organisations that have pushed this idea that children are born in the wrong bodies and should be given help in their view, at the earliest possible age, leading to, irreversible puberty blockers and the like, pushing exactly the stuff that the Cash Review exposed as very deeply damaging and harmful to vulnerable children who are being treated in this way. And there's nothing about that I find as something to celebrate, something that I should be proud of or they should be proud of. I find it a deeply sort of unpleasant. I mean, I see that flag now. It doesn't fill me with pride or good feeling, but I also think, I don't know why a local council think it's relevant when you're talking about, I mean, this is so far less than 1% of the people of Hastings and indeed Britain and indeed the world. And yet the idea that we need to be aware constantly of trans, you literally can't move without these flags, whether it's the rainbow flag, the pride rainbow flag, the trans flag, constantly telling you about trans and people's preferred pronouns and this and that. It is in our faces every single minute of every day, of every week, of every year now. Why would we need to be more aware of it?
Well, quite right. And, there was a time in which these organisations could plead ignorance as to what this flag truly stands for, but that time has long passed. And so these individuals, these groups, these councillors, they know full well what they are doing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want listeners to think that this is just a Labour Party problem, for example. The trans flag was recently flown outside Great Yarmouth Town Hall. That's a Conservative-run council. So this applies across the board. There's a woman who formerly worked for Bracknell Forest Council. She's just started litigation against her former employers for discrimination and harassment because she raised concerns about them getting rid of single-sex toilet facilities in the council building. So this is rife across the country.
Yeah, I mean, you've done some incredible research lately, and I know I've always avidly follow you on social media because you highlight yet another, really often another retailer, another company that I buy stuff from, who has been totally and utterly imbued with this ideology. And again, this is not anti-trans. This is about an ideology, a sort of a political ideology, an ideology that requires thought police, requires women being told to shut up and put up with things, to give up women's sport, women's safety, women's rights that have been long fought for by my mother's generation and before. And we're not going to do that. It involves children having their bodies mutilated and transformed. This is not stuff that I'm ever going to be quiet about, and I know you haven't either, and you've been a fantastic advocate on this front. Nothing to do with anti-trans. Again, I think most people who identify as trans don't want anything to do with this ideology. I think they're absolutely horrified by it as well. But this is imbued. It's across the government, the NHS, our schools, pretty much every major retailer, as far as I can tell, local councils. It's now everywhere. Tell us how it informs so much of what the services we buy and the services we pay our taxes for.
Well, it's the language. It's become part of the lexicon. You know, the term LGBT just rolls off the tongue now so easily, even though on the one hand you've got one sexuality, on the other you've got gender dysphoria, which is a mental health condition. We're kind of lumping these things in together. But we see corporations continue to engage in this kind of woke virtue signalling. We've seen that with the Boots advert, you know, using gender-neutral pronouns.
Yeah, explain the Boots advert. We were talking about the John Lewis Christmas advert today, and that's got two sisters. Although it's been pointed out, Matthew Lars, you just pointed out, there's not a single man.
Yes, it's now becoming around because there's not a single man.
Not a single man.
Or boy.
Fair, you know, it's women who do the shopping. Who we sodding kidding.
Well, many they're getting the last-minute gifts there, aren't they?
By the way, John Lewis, yeah, we don't do the last-minute shopping. We've done it all, you know, a month earlier. But James, this is coming back to you. The Boots advert, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it's really glamorous advert, but it's got Father Christmas asleep while all the elves are doing all the hard work, making all the presents to go on his sledge. Father Christmas, of course, denoted in our culture as a white man, but of course all the elves, I think pretty much all but one or two, are black. Or mixed race, some we know prominent trans actors, and the main character in it is a black actress who's the one who complained about how the balcony at Buckingham Palace for the coronation was horribly white. So I mean, big question marks there. So again, a lot of it is just imbued in every advert, isn't it?
It is, yes. So you've got the kind of critical race element there, and then you've got the gender ideology stuff. You've got kind of Mrs. Claus referring to a child in the advert as them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm surprised that the advert didn't say that some of the reindeer have come out as non-binary. I mean, the whole thing's mad, and you see it, you know, across the board. For example, I saw an advert for E45 skincare cream the other day. And the entire advert is based around skincare for quote-unquote trans people. And you've got men there identifying as women saying that this cream allows them to feel reborn.
Oh, I did see that one, yes. It's utterly bizarre. But again, what is the market they think they're playing to here, given how few people there are who are trans in this country?
Well, quite right, and I've seen increasing calls for boycott Boots and some of these other corporations. I mean, it's the only way that they're going to get the message. They clearly believe this stuff, and so the only way they're going to get the picture is by hitting them where it hurts, which is in the pocket.
Well, that's the thing. And again, that's not being anti-trans. Not saying, you know, you don't need to go on about it all the time. You just don't need to lecture us about this. We assume you're not transphobic unless you tell us otherwise.
Well, that's it, Julia. I mean, it's the same way now that you can no longer just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. I think that, you know, the majority of the British public are utterly sick of this, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
No, as you say, it's all about the boycotts. What can we do? James Esses, co-founder of Thoughtful Therapist, Declaration for Biological Reality, author. Thank you very much indeed. Very quick word from Matthew Larser.
Well, I said I thought we'd already had it. It turns out there are two, because there's this is Trans Week, but there's the International Transgender Day of Visibility, which is on March the 31st.
Do we need more visibility? Again,
we've had two.
It's non-stop.
Yeah, we've got an autumn and a spring version, just in case you hadn't thought about it enough.
For the love of God, make it stop. I now don't like rainbows anymore because that has been appropriate. I used to love them. Like
Unicorns is an issue as well.
The gay pride flag is one freedom, but that was at a time when gay people didn't have the equal rights with straight people, and now they do. Can we move on, please, and all just judge each other?
Well, yes, it's the different sorts of pride flags.
Your sexuality and your gender are the two least interesting things about you. No, I'm going to highlight your mental health problems as well. No, they're the least interesting things about you. Say something or do something interesting. Stop telling me how you identify in your pronouns. I don't care.